Jack Evans and I are talking, and he goes, okay, what's it going to take? I think we're negotiating. And I'm telling him stuff, and he's writing it down. Okay, what about your co-hosts? What about your, this and that? He goes, obviously we need to find out what their contract situation is, and I don't want to be tampering and all that. Okay, I understand. But he goes, but what do you think? So I give him all the numbers and all the things that it would take to go. He signs it, pushes it across the table. He goes, consider this an offer. In my head, I'm thinking, I should have asked for more. I thought we were negotiating. I'd already gone big. I thought I'd gone big.
Benztown president Dave Chachi Dennis loves radio and all of his radio friends.
Hey, Chachi. Hey, everybody.
Because Chachi loves everybody.
He's the voice behind one of Las Vegas's most beloved morning shows, the driving force behind some of the biggest charitable efforts in the city, a two-time Emmy Award winner. He's hosted and auctioneered countless charity and corporate civic events across the country. Sports fans know his voice well, whether he's calling the action for the NHL's Seattle Kraken, hyping up the crowd for the two-time WNBA champion Las Vegas Aces, or serving as the longtime voice of NASCAR at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway. He's also been at the mic for the NCAA's Sweet 16 and Elite 8, USA Basketball, the Las Vegas Bowl, and nearly 2 decades of UNLV football and basketball. But beyond the arenas and airwaves, he is best known for his annual toy drive, where he lives and broadcasts from atop of a 30-foot scaffold for 12 days straight during the holiday season. In 2024, the event once again shattered records, collecting 42 semi-trucks full of toys, 7,674 bicycles, and nearly $800,000 in cash in gift cards, bringing the 26-year total to an estimated $60 million in donations. His efforts have earned him multiple accommodations from the city of Las Vegas, the state of Nevada, and Clark County, as well as Best of the City and Best of Las Vegas honors by the Review Journal, as well as the Silver State Humanitarian Award. He's a powerhouse in radio, a force in the community, and someone with an incredible story to tell. Please welcome the host and creator of 98.5 KLUC's long-running and highly rated Chet Buchanan show, Chet Buchanan. Chet, man, what a bio.
That's pretty cool when somebody else says it. It's been a great ride. That's really funny because you don't get to hear somebody else. That's what somebody typed up for me, and we send that out we need a bio for you. And 15-year-old me that started out washing the van and sweeping the parking lot. I think he'd be okay with that.
I sure hope so. I've got to believe that. We share a common friend in Scott Herman, and we were both playing yesterday in the Broadcasters Foundation of America golf tournament, and he is just singing your praises, and he says one of the top 10 morning men in the country.
Amazing.
And I actually 100% concur with that. It's not only are you incredibly talented and certainly entertaining, and you've just had blockbuster ratings for year after year after year, but I think most importantly, what you do for the community is unbelievable. I'm excited to dive into the toy drive and learn more about that. But I just want to thank you for that, because I think it really speaks to the power of our medium and how we really can serve our community better than anybody else.
That part of it always made sense. That part of it was like, okay, this is a great way to give, like you should do that. I guess I never really thought of it as content in and of itself, but it is. And so there was the other story behind that, and I'm sure you're going to want to dive into that later. But being involved in the community is the one thing that we can do. It's the one thing that we should do. And I think it's the one thing that voice tracking, other entities that are coming in from outside of your market, those are things they can't do. So isn't the idea that we're supposed to reach out and touch people and be involved, not just in their ears, but in their hearts? Isn't that what we're supposed to be doing?
I agree completely. And the fact that it resonates in ratings.
Yeah.
And not only are you helping the community and so many children around here in Las Vegas, but it also really does translate into a highly engaged and entertaining and high-rated show.
Well, and all those things that you just talked about, if I go out and I introduce myself to somebody and you can tell there's a glimmer of recognition, but they're not quite sure why. And I go, well, I do the morning show on 98.5 KLUC, and they're like, maybe, whatever. They don't know. well, I was the guy who was, on the court for UNLV for years, and maybe we saw each other at a Rebel game. No, that's it. Eventually, I worked my way around to, I'm the guy that lives on the thing and raises toys for kids. And they're like, oh, that's it. You're that guy. And they know immediately. That's fun.
It really has grown to define you, which is a phenomenal thing, much like Santa Claus in a lot of ways.
There are way worse things.
Exactly.
There are way worse things. So,
let's talk a little bit about growing up.
Only kid, spent time between mom's house and dad's house, kind of out in the sticks, spent a lot of time out in the front yard shooting hoops. I listened to KJR religiously. I totally loved radio. KUBE 93 came in. Charlie Brown, who had been the morning guy on KJR, was the PD and was the morning guy on KUBE. So I just kind of naturally gravitated there. I've just always loved top 40 music. I've always loved the radio. There was never a question in my mind that I wasn't going to be on the radio.
Were your parents in the entertainment business?
No, my dad's an engineer. We've always joked my dad was not a rocket scientist, but he was a rocket engineer. He helped build the space shuttle.
Kidding.
All that kind of stuff back in
the
day.
Very bright man.
Yeah, he was smart. And you don't realize it until you're an adult. And my dad was, I don't want to say he was crazy, but he was just very Depression era kid. So he was just very determined, and just both of my parents worked extremely hard. My mother was a mail carrier for almost 30 years. Disciplined, worked hard, all of those things. And I think that's kind of where I get that, where it just kind of comes natural.
You're smart with an incredible work ethic.
I don't know about the smart.
It's a remarkable combination.
I don't know about the smart, but the work ethic part, I know how to work. I tell everybody all the time. I grew up on a farm, and I grew up with, my mom. We were kind of out in the sticks, and there was always work to be done. And so I know what work is. I know this is not it. And it never has been. It's 40 years now. Yeah. Are there days where it's harder than others? Does it suck sometimes getting up at 3:00 in the morning? Sure. I was talking with Mercedes from Mix 94.1 the other day. Doing the show's the great part. Sometimes it's just hard to manage all the personalities, including your own. And that, I think, is where the struggle comes in. I think it was John Maynard from Robin and Maynard that said, they pay me all this money to get up in the morning. I throw in the show for free. And I think that's right. I think it's right.
So you get your first gig as a high school intern, doing weekends at KRKO.
Yeah.
Fill me in. How did you get that job? And
I was working at the fairgrounds for a food concession company. There may have been a little bit of a skim operation that had been handed down over the years. This is a true story. I think statute of limitations is, you can't prove any of this. KRKO was out there doing a remote for the opening weekend of racing at Evergreen Speedway. And I just told my partner, I said, you get all the money. I'm going to have some product over to these guys at the radio station. And I basically just loaded them up with burgers and Cokes and whatever they wanted, and said, I'll do anything if you'll just let me come and hang out. And they were like, great, show up Monday morning. I'm like, I can't do that. I got baseball. And they're like, okay, kid. It was about this time of the year. They said, when's baseball over? And I said, Memorial Day. And they're like, okay, we'll see you Memorial Day, kid. You could tell they were like, the Tuesday after Memorial Day, baseball was over, and I showed up on their doorstep, and they were like, oh my God, I remember you. This is that kid. And little did they know, I rode my bike 17 miles down farm roads to show up at KRKO.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah. I was all in. I got home from school, got on my bike, pedaled like crazy to get there as soon as I could, because I couldn't drive yet. And they were like, okay, why don't you wash this van? Literally, we went in, we got a Rubbermaid garbage can, just one of the little ones out of the bathroom, dumped all the garbage out of it, washed it out. Here you go. Take this. There's some dish soap, and there's a hose out back. See that van? Looks pretty dirty, doesn't it? And I'm like, okay. So I washed the van. I see there's they had a mobile studio. Remember those?
Of course.
The mobile studio.
I thought those were the coolest things.
Yeah, with the window in the side and everything. It was like a converted milk truck or something. I don't know what it was. And it had some equipment in it, whatever. So I thought, well, I'm trying to make a good impression here. So I washed the van. I washed the news car. I'm going inside. I think I'm done. It's kind of a warm day, warm spring day. So it's kind of the point where I've taken my 15-year-old kid, take my shirt off. I don't have any idea of that I probably shouldn't do that. But then I go by and it says sales on the parking spots. And I'm thinking, well, sales means money. So that must be a good thing. Maybe, so these guys must be important. It's a true story. Every bit of it. So I'm literally washing these 3 cars. Because again, I'm trying to make a good impression. I'm scrubbing bird poop off the bumper of the last car. And it must have been 5 o'clock because here comes the 3 salespeople, that we had at this little AM station. They come out of the door and this woman named Pam Fain, who's Pam Thompson now and lives here in Las Vegas.
No way.
So I get to see her every once in a while. We've been threatening to have lunch for a year, but Pam comes out and goes, "Who told you to do that? Are we?" And she's asking, "Are we paying this kid who's washing our cars?" Because they think I'm out there trying to hustle.
Right.
And the program director, Robert O'Brien, comes out behind him and he goes, "No, that's our new intern." And in my head, my mother's voice is going, "If it's not yours, don't touch it." And I think I've ruined my career before it started. And literally it went from washing the van. I did that for a summer, swept the parking lot, put carts away, filed sales orders. And I didn't know. They just kept giving me stuff to do. I kept showing up.
I love this. I mean, the fact no job too big, too small. You would just dive into it, roll your sleeves up and get it done.
Oh, well, but that was the deal. I told them, if you'll show me some stuff, let me hang around. That's what I'll do. And then I went and made air checks in the production room.
At this point, are you aware that you want to be on air or you just like the energy of being at the station and you want to kind of explore it all?
Yeah. It was funny. There was never really a flip the switch moment because it was just a natural, it really felt like a natural progression. Like I thought maybe I was going to get out of high school and go get a poli-sci degree and, maybe become a lawyer. I didn't know. I knew I wanted to do this.
It just felt right.
When they say it's in your blood, I really believe that. I really believe it was in my blood.
So later in the summer of 84, you get a gig doing weekends and fill-in now at KBQ.
Yep.
How, at this point, in terms of like learning to be on the air, do you have a coach or is the program? Who's helping you? Or are you just cracking the mic and opening it up and going for it?
Yeah, we were just getting after it. Because I was doing every shift they would give me at KRKO. Like one day I had to leave school early because they let me fill in to do afternoons. Like they thought I was good enough that I could fill in to do afternoons.
Really big deal.
Are you kidding? The night guy was mad.
I bet.
The night guy was not pleased. Because that's kind of how it works.
Sure.
You'd move the night guy into afternoons. Somebody else would fill. Maybe the overnight guy gets to do nights.
What are you, 15, 16 at this point?
16. Yeah. Oh no. So he was big mad. So Everett is north of Seattle. Monroe is east of Everett, where I went to high school. Then the state track championships were in Tacoma, which is where KBQ was.
Gotcha.
So I just show up at the doorstep. We go down to support the rest of our high school buddies in the high school state track championships. Of course, it's April in Seattle, so it's dumping rain. And I just show up on the doorstep at KBQ and ask if I can see Sean Lynch, who's the PD. And I have an air check in my hand, unscoped. Here you go. Here's my air check. Because I figured you don't want fake me. You want real me. And I just give him an unscoped air check. And I ended up doing the same thing. I ended up dropping one off for Bob Case at KUBE, dropped one off at KPLZ for Jeff King.
I find your confidence very charming at that age to just show up, to have the conversation.
Naivete. I figured I wanted to make a good impression. And I look, I was good in school and I was ASB president and all that.
So you're
that kind of stuff. So I did
naturally a leader and you're communicative.
But I didn't know that's not how it works.
Well, apparently it does.
literally when I went to KUBE, I took a bus. I went to work with my mom that morning for her mail route. So like 6:30 in the morning, and I took 3 buses to get to KUBE, which was literally on the shores of Lake Washington. You got to go downtown, then transfer, go up over the hill, down the other side, walk a half a mile, whatever. And I'd like to see Bob Case. He's not available right now. Okay, well, I'll wait. Well, can I tell him who's here? Yeah, my name's Chet Buchanan. Yeah, I did weekends at KRKO, whatever. They had changed format. We all got fired.
Oh.
I was still a board op. So I'd already gotten fired when I was barely 16 years old. And you don't realize when you're working at an AM station in Everett, there's a bit of the grizzled, well, I wasn't good enough to make it in Seattle. Right. Kid, this business is going to ruin you. Well, make sure you save your money. Don't get married. Don't ever get married. All that kind of stuff. These guys are telling you stuff. And I'm there, my eyes are like saucers. But I waited in the lobby. I waited in the lobby for, I don't know, 5-6 hours. And Bob would call the front. Is he still out there? He's still out there. He's still here.
He's afraid to leave his office.
And finally he said, just tell him to leave the tape. And then he called a couple of days later. Is this the kid that was out in the lobby? And they're all sitting around listening to the air check. You're really 16? Yeah, I'm 16. Man, we don't have any. They wanted me to do, be the guy, the sticker spotter, to go around and be that guy. And then they were like, oh no, you got to be 18 to be on our insurance. So
you can't even drive the van.
Put it all on hold. It put it all on hold. And then I ended up getting a call from Sean Lynch to go and do weekends at KNBQ. And literally 2 hours, he called me, can you be on the air tonight at midnight? And literally 2 hours later, Jeff King called me from KPLZ. Hey, we got a few weekend shifts open. And I'm like, I just took a job at KNBQ. I'm going on the air tonight. He's like, okay, then. See you later. Good luck. Hangs up the phone. And literally that's how it started.
I absolutely love this story. Not only certainly the way that you communicate and maybe the naivety, but there was certainly persistence as well. You didn't give up. The rejection, getting let go, you still, rolled up your sleeves and kept on going, which I think is such an important lesson. I do feel a lot of people give up too soon.
I'm a big sports guy. I wasn't a really great athlete, but that was also how I had a pretty good run playing baseball, decent basketball player, but I didn't have a ton of athletic ability, but I knew that I could outwork you. And I knew that was how
you were going to put in the hours.
That was how it worked for me.
Yeah.
And early on when I was playing Little League baseball, we had tryouts for All-Stars, to go play in the tournaments and all that kind of stuff.
The traveling team.
Yeah. Well, we didn't do that. And then, like if you went to the Little League regionals, then you traveled, not the way kids do it now. And by the way, I wouldn't have been able to because my mom wouldn't have been able to afford it. But I made this all-star team and I really didn't understand why, because the kid that I beat out was better than me. And I went and I asked the coach, I just said, how? Why? And he goes, because you hustle. You hustle. He goes, you hustle after everything. And so then that was like, oh, okay. Well, if nothing else, you can hustle and you do, and you're a leader. And I was like, wow, I'm a leader because I ran after the ball. Okay.
You ran it out. That's
that's
another, I think, incredibly important quality. I completely get that.
I suppose.
Hire for attitude and you can, and a lot of times train the rest.
I know the difference if I've prepped the day before for a show or if I've gotten up the morning of.
For sure.
Sure. And for me, the day before prep is all busy work. It's organizational for me. The day before prep, the morning of prep is more content, conceptual. You have the other meetings, and
that's why I think a lot of broadcasters and podcasters, for that matter, they misinterpret how much work goes into putting on a phenomenal show or a great podcast. For every hour you're on the air, it's really at least an hour of prep and understanding what that show's going to be about.
But you have to free yourself up. The more prep you do, any great athlete will tell you that as well. They're like Kobe Bryant. Michael Jordan worked really hard in the gym. Russell Wilson. Yep. I'm a huge Seahawks fan, so those years were important to me. And Russ would talk about it a lot. Pete Carroll would talk about it a lot. That just you don't want to have to think, and that I really live by that. Even with the Kraken stuff, I memorized the rosters. I memorize them because when the goal call comes down and it's 22 from 63 and 7, I don't want to have to be looking at and I still will look at the roster, but I want to be ready to go as soon as I always want to be ready before video's ready. So when my show caller, Caitlin Salemi, says, Chet, go, I can go.
It's a really remarkable work ethic. And
yeah, but why make it harder on yourself?
it's a good way. I've honestly never heard it phrased that way, but you're absolutely right.
Oh, no, I'm trying to make it easy.
Yeah.
That's all. I just don't want to think. I want to perform.
So tell me about getting the call to go to Z100 in Portland. I mean, that's at that time too. I mean, that was an incredible radio station. Is Ken Benson there yet?
No, that was Gary Bryan.
Gary Bryan. My gosh.
Gary was, the station was 6 months old. It had just begun to take hold in the market. Gary had just started doing the morning zoo. They were putting the staff together, putting the finishing touches on the staff. Johnny Edwards, who's an immensely talented individual, was basically doing a morning show at night. I don't know what the whole deal was, but I think he thought there was going to be a morning show in his future. He left to go do something else. And so Sean Lynch, who had, he and Gary Bryan are best friends. And Sean was going to go to Portland eventually. And he just told Gary, hey, I got this kid. I think we can make something out of him. 17 years old. I packed my stuff up and we're going to Portland. Gary was so great. And I'll get emotional about it right now. I love Gary so much. And I learned so much from him. And he's such a great jock and he's such a great personality.
Total pro and still to this day crushing it at KRKO.
Yeah. Oh no, because for my money, he's the most underrated guy that's ever stepped in front of a microphone because I think he's that good. And Gary was so great with carrot and stick. You know what I mean? Like he would pump me up, but if I got out of line, he'd be like, what are you doing? And it was easy because he would just go, what are you doing? What is this? Hey, that thing, don't do that.
Let's talk about that transition growing up in a rural area and, literally riding your bike 17 miles to the radio station. And now you're in Portland. That's a big market difference. At 17 years old, what was that like? I mean, you're still so incredibly young.
Yeah, you're living the dream. They're paying you to be on the radio every day. And you get exponentially better by being on the radio every day. You start making mistakes and developing bad habits and then breaking them. You know what I mean? And you just start getting better because you're on the air every day.
How did you stay on the rails? I mean, there's a lot of temptation. In the 80s, working at a CHR radio station, you're in Portland, obviously doing well for the first time in your life, probably making some pretty decent money.
No, I was making, I remember my first raise. They hired me for 16 grand. I went from 16 to 17. I think I was somewhere in the 20s. I got an offer from across the street. I think I was like 21, 22 years old. I got an offer from across the street. So they bumped me up to 33,000.
And you're like, yes.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But I was doing club stuff.
Right.
Which was, probably a couple $100 a night cash.
I remember I would get like $300 to do that down in San Diego. And you're like,
all of that. I just love being on the radio every day. I had a roommate who was my buddy, Rich Patterson, who's still a really good friend to this day. He's the producer for the Portland Trailblazers. He's done 3,000 games in a row, something like some crazy number like that. He's done it for 27 years.
Amazing. The Iron Man of play by play.
The captain, they call him, because he runs the ship.
That's great.
And Rich and I we'd have beers and sure, when I was old enough to be in the bars and, we had our fun, but there was always work to do. You never wanted to not be able to do the show. And no, because being on the radio is everything. It was everything. We'd listen, man, remember when you trade air checks? You'd make a copy of an air check and send it to your buddy. So we're listening to Bill Lee at KFRC and getting blown away and hearing a KHJ air check from 1978 or air checks from Z100 in New York.
I mean, you are a student of the game.
You're immersed. Yeah, but we were all immersed.
Yeah.
I don't know that I was any more of a nerd than okay, maybe I was. But I was about to say that. You can't say that with a straight face. I'm still that nerd. I was enamored. I heard a Kiss FM you know how much I love Rick Dees. And I heard an air check from 1981. Kiss was just finding its way. You could tell because there was no production value. It was kind of all stripped down. Music in 81, top 40 music in 81 was so god awful. And Rick was finding his way, but it was still great. And he was such a great jock. Even on a day that you could tell where he's flailing at it, man. You could tell his relationship with Rachel wasn't quite there yet, with Rachel Donahue. Yep. Commander Chuck wasn't even a part of the show yet. You could tell they hadn't built the show.
Very, very early days.
Yeah. And Rick's just trying to find his way through it. But through it all, he was a really good jock. You could tell, that's one thing I don't think he gets credit for is what a good jock he is.
Amazing.
You could tell he prepped the hell out of it as much as he could. And it was still really cool. Like, it was inspirational to hear that because I went, God, this is Rick Dees. And I think if he listened to it, he'd go, man, that was a tough day. But it was still pretty damn good. It was like pizza. The worst I ever had, still pretty damn good.
100%. That's a great analogy. It's a great analogy. Yeah. It's like an elite athlete's worst day is still amazing. Still amazing, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's what I took from that. I went, wow, look at Rip and you can just feel him working it out. And it was really cool.
Tell me about getting the call now to Seattle, because being from Washington, that's got to be incredible on a lot of levels.
Yeah. In Everett, it's 56. In Tacoma, it's 55. And on the shores of Lake Washington, it's 53 at KUBE 93, Seattle.
I love that. I love that. I can see.
It really is on the shores of Lake Washington. Yeah, that was the goal. And just Gary had gone from Z100 to KUBE, and he brought me with him. He wanted a night jock. Because KUBE was kind of and I didn't know what that was. In fact, the Hot AC didn't exist in the mid 80s, but it was it was an adult top 40. And it was kind of a cool delivery. And Gary wanted to kind of put a little edge on it. And so I just ended up coming to Seattle, and it was fantastic. Portland was a great run. Portland was so much fun. I had a 17 share, 16 share, 12 plus. I had a 30 share, 18, 34. I had a 70 share in teens. And then, and then to get to go to Seattle, now you're in a battle with KPLZ. You've got Delilah doing her thing. So she's got upper demo women, out the door. Mark in the Dark Allen at KPLZ, he and I, and man, radio was a battle then. I was inspired. In fact, I have a text that I sent you after you talked to my agent, Paul Anderson. I said, the one takeaway is that I need to be better friends with Bob Rivers and with you. And thankfully, I've become both.
Are you serious?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Bob and I got to know each other a bit before he passed, because he lived here in Vegas. And so we got to hang out. And you and I are hanging out.
What an amazing talent he was.
Bob was a guy that goes, okay, this is cool. Now what if we turned it on its head? There needs to be more of that.
It's a great analogy.
Need to do more of that.
Yeah. And, when you look back and we talk about authenticity, and I know we just kind of came from the same panel and how important that is. And Bob was that towards the end of his life. He was very open about what was happening and the struggles. And I found that so brave in a lot of ways.
Bob also there was no hype to him. There was no pretense. So, and that's why it didn't really connect with me initially. Like I didn't get it. He was a rock guy.
Sure.
And Bob Rivers talked like this. He talked like a real person. And, I have a certain amount of energy.
Yeah.
But you get me in front of a mic too. It kicks up a notch a little bit. And so I didn't get it. I didn't understand it until much later. And I'm glad I did.
So you're on KUBE now. Is it starting to really gel at this point, or is it still a little bit early?
No, it was fun because we cranked it up a bit. It made it a little more exciting. Yeah, but it was a great time.
Did you feel a different sense of pressure going from Portland to Seattle?
No, it was, again, I was with Gary. That was cool. But then Gary left shortly after to go to PLJ. Bob Case came into the picture. Well, Tom Hutler was there for a minute. And then Bob and I met up later. It was just a fun and interesting time. And there was a little bit of, I had been well taken care of. I was always with people that supported me and liked me a lot. Not that Tom and I didn't get along, but I wasn't Tom's guy. And we've talked about it, and he had other guys that they were his people, and he had a different vision for the radio station. And so it was just it was a great learning experience. Looking back on it, it was a tremendous learning experience.
Amazing to go from Everett, Portland, and then Seattle, still in your early 20s, is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And to have that opportunity and to have the tutelage of Gary Bryan, I mean, you're obviously amazing at what you do, but you also had some luck in terms of having these great mentors around you.
Oh, yeah. And then to go to Phoenix with Bob Case and to start learning a similar but different, to go with Bob, to be his APD.
Which I was going to ask you about. So before, when you're at Portland and then you're at KUBE, were you doing anything in terms of like learning how to schedule music?
I was the music director in Portland.
Oh, you were?
I was the music director in Portland. I got an MD of the Year nomination when I was 19, which was really cool.
Oh my God, that's so cool. Was it R&R?
It was Gavin.
It was Gavin. I remember Gavin. Those conventions were a blast.
Oh God, so much fun. And I loved record reps, and I loved finding new music and all of that kind of stuff. And it was so much fun. That was part of the thing too. When Tom came in, I wanted to be the music director and I was not. And so it was like, and that's when you got to learn. It's like, okay, well, you keep doing what you're doing. Don't worry about the rest of this stuff. Just keep doing what you're doing. Your job is to do a great night show now and just figure it out. But then Bob Case was going to program KCZP in Phoenix, and he needed an ally and needed somebody, and we had never had the chance to work together.
So you pick up and you go to Phoenix.
Yeah.
And what was that transition like? Another legendary set of call letters, by the way.
Dude, I'm on the plane and I'm flying in and I'm like, where's the green? I'm like, where's the, it's the desert, And I guess, I don't know what I expected, but
you've never been to the market before.
No.
I'll take it.
He flew me in. No, they flew me in to do the, the handshake, but I knew Bob Case called, I was going. And to be the APD, and it was KCZP. Here's the part I didn't know, and I didn't fully, and how could you? Bruce Kelly had left 3 weeks earlier. Kevin Ryder was the night guy. Kevin had just left to form Kevin and Bean at KROC. Gene Baxter had left 2 years earlier, so KCZP was not KCZP anymore. And I come in, now I'm replacing Kevin Ryder, who was a great night jock, by himself. So we do this big hype. We're going to give away Janet Jackson tickets every 15 minutes. She's going to play at ASU. The new night guy is coming in. About the third phone call in. Now remember, we fired the morning guy and he had gone public with it and sued the station.
Oh my God.
Right? So now this is a news story. People don't like us very much. Kevin Ryder had left, and I don't know if it was a plant or whatever it was. But I answered, KCZP, I'm on fire, right? We're giving away Janet Jackson tickets every 15 minutes. This is KCZP. Guys, Napoleon's KCZP. Maybe not as much. I answer the phone. KCZP, who's this? Hey, is this that Chuck guy? Well, no, my name's Chet. Who are you? Listen, it doesn't matter. You're going to suck like all the rest of them. And they hang up the phone. And for a solid 10 minutes, I'd never had that happen before. It had never happened to me before. And I was just like, okay, here we go.
So you get called back to go to KUBE again.
Yeah.
Now, how did that come to be?
Bob went to Seattle. Bob said, I'll come and get you. I'll get you out of there. And that was basically what that is. So then we go. Now we've had a little sniff of Rhythmic Top 40, and we see where music's going. Next thing you know, we're hiring Jerry Clifton, and we're going to take KUBE from Michael Bolton, Bon Jovi. This is 91 now.
Right. Which is a tough time too, because you've got grunge is coming on the scene and the music scene, especially in Seattle.
That hadn't quite, yes, it was bubbling, but it was in its own lane. You know what I mean? It was definitely, there were rock kids and there were.
Right.
So we start playing Salt and Pepper, Push It. Again, remember, I had this little 5'4" sales person, Elaine Goldstein, again, who I love forever. She jacks me up in the hallway. I'm not kidding you. She grabs me by my shirt, shoves me into the wall and goes, "What are you guys doing? What are you doing? You're going to ruin this radio station. How am I going to sell this filth?" And it was like, you got to understand, this is the music now. This is what it is. And so we took, that's when it became KUBE 93 Jams. We brought in Jerry Clifton. One day we go to a record store in the suburbs. We watch these girls run back and forth from Snoop Dogg to Pearl Jam and back again, and showing each other, "Look what I got. Look what I got. I've got Nirvana. I've got," whatever.
Sure.
NWA.
Right.
Whatever the record was.
Ice Cube. What an amazing time for music.
Yeah. And so we dipped our toe into, we called it the New Music Revolution, and we dipped our toe into playing both sides, and everybody hated us. Everybody hated us. The hip hop people were like, "What are you doing?" The grunge people were going, "What are you doing? You're not authentic." And we were inauthentic to both camps. And so we pulled out of it and went back to hip hop. Those were the most fun times. We had such a blast. And Jerry Clifton pushed creativity.
What was that like? And I've heard so many things about Jerry throughout the years, but what was that like learning from him and having him as a mentor?
There was a lot of the art mixed with the science, because you had Colleen Cassidy, Colleen the Record Queen, and there was a lot of, we were our own network. Us, PGC in Washington, I think Power in LA was still involved, Z90 in San Diego, Power 92 in Phoenix. All the Clifton stations, we shared information, and it was very street-based. Shelly Hart and I spent every weekend, every Friday and Saturday, making notes on napkins. We had, I think it was a 1 through 5, what the record did, if maybe they were using a record to cycle the dance floor because they had to sell drinks, whatever. And that information, we would hit every record store. What's selling for you? The greatest thing, when you ask somebody in a record store, what do I need to know about that I don't know yet? Because they'll tell you, and they'll tell you whether they like it. In those days,
sure,
they would tell you whether they liked it or whether it was legitimately gathering heat. And you also knew this store favored this store favored that. But we used all of it. Very street-based, and it was fun. It was an exciting
sense
time.
Of research that you have, and really, again, goes back to prep.
Literal discovery. We talked to the DJs. We talked to the record pools. All of those things to find record. We didn't charts. Great. Record companies. Awesome. We also went by our gut a lot.
At this point, are you starting to have aspirations to do mornings?
No. I wanted to be a PD. I wanted to be a programmer. Really bad. No, mornings. I didn't think I'd be funny enough. I didn't think I'd be able to get up in the morning, because we were out in the clubs every night.
Right.
We're in the clubs. So I'd do the night show, and I'd get off the air at 11. There's a place called Charlie's up on Capitol Hill. We'd head straight there, chicken nachos and, and drinks. Then we might go hit, if there was a place that was popping, we might go hit that just to see what the vibe was, and then 2:30 go home. 8:30 record meetings were tough. Were really hard.
I can imagine.
But
you're young and you've got that energy and that obviously the passion.
Yeah. And then there were just, then KUBE just started it was just shifting the personnel in there, and maybe those 8:30 meetings shouldn't have been so tough. I mean, I don't know. I think they were just trying to bring in talent. And so that just led to me I wasn't going to be the next PD, and that sucked. Yeah. So that's when I ended up going to Salt Lake.
So then you go to Salt Lake, and I'm sorry, I got it out of order. So did you go back to?
No, I went to Portland for a minute.
Okay.
Which was great. And Portland was really cool. That's when I met Ken Benson.
Got it.
Portland. So I left. It was really great.
Who was the big morning guy at Portland at that time?
John Murphy had left.
John Murphy.
He had left. He had gone, I forget what he was doing.
I remember him coming down when I was working for Rick, and he came down to visit Rick for a while. He was actually in the studio for a few days.
Well, Murphy,
kind of wild.
Murphy said to him, "It's so good." He said, "Murphy, Z100, it's Murphy, John Murphy in the Morning Zoo." You know, I mean, he was doing Rick. I mean, with his own spin. Murphy had left, so I went down to be the music director for Ken Benson, and I did afternoons initially. Then they had, I want to say it was Humble Billy Hayes was the morning guy. Maybe it was Scott Thrower. Hayes had left. Murphy had left. Hayes had left. Thrower was leaving for whatever reason. I don't remember why. And they said, will you host the morning show? Sure. I didn't know anything about it. Just, Dano, the show's not going to be about you. You're just going to be a good jock.
Yeah. Facilitate the music.
Be a good jock.
Right.
Start they'll take care of the funny. You do what they tell you to do. So we kind of did that. It was a little tough because Dan Clark, who was the creative genius behind that show for a billion years. And he was the number 2 mic and again, just really wickedly smart and funny. And, Dan didn't like it that I would leave the morning show and then go schedule music or go take record calls or do whatever. And so he kind of wanted me to be more focused on the morning show. So there was a little friction there. You look back on it now and it's so silly.
Sure. But I get it, man. When you are in that pressure cooker all day long
and Stacey Lynn was coming up and she wanted to be the music director. And so they were giving her opportunities, kind of taking some stuff away from me to make Dan happy and just for harmony's sake. I mean, Ken was in a tough spot because he's not going to make everybody happy.
Right.
At that point. So that's when it popped up. There was an opportunity to program in Salt Lake, but I learned so much. I was probably a morning show for a year and a half, maybe.
I mean, a great place though to, learn and skin your knees.
I was there the day that we got through. Nelson was Bill Clinton and we got through to Michael Jackson's hospital room as Bill Clinton calling Michael Jackson to tell him to get better. I was there. I was in the room when the OJ verdict came down. I mean, there were a lot of things
historical.
I'm really glad that I was a part of.
Yeah.
With that.
And then you go and tell me about Salt Lake and how that opportunity came.
There was an opening. They were paying $33,000 a year. I wanted to be a programmer. I said, I'll do it.
No kidding. At that point, I'm guessing it's a step back financially for you to go and make that move.
Oh, yeah.
But you knew that was the right step. 1 step back, 2 steps forward.
For as good as it all was, if I wanted to be a programmer, I needed to make that move. That station needed cleaning up. There was 700 records in the music library. There were a lot of things that were going on unsupervised. So I went in there, cut the library down to 175 records, started spinning the powers a billion times, which wasn't happening in that market. And we went from 16th to 3rd in 2 books. Away we go.
Amazing. And you're doing mornings simultaneously?
Oh yeah. But we were playing 8 songs an hour, maybe 9. We were just, we were having fun. I don't know that it was a morning show, so to speak. It was kind of the first time that I had to shoulder that. So I didn't quite know what I was doing. So we just went in and had fun.
This is the first time you're a program director and a full-fledged morning show.
Cool part about that, Gary Bryan had always taught me the greatest thing to be is the program director and the morning guy, because we would have a wild thought and I would call a record rep and go, hey, I need 2 tickets to the show in Miami. Can you get me airfare? No? Okay, well, I'll go somewhere else. I'll get the airfare. I owe you. I need a box of t-shirts by this weekend. I mean, that kind of stuff where we could you had the tools to make things happen. And it was me pulling all the strings. So no, that was a great time.
That moment in time in a market like that was actually relatively rare to be a PD and a morning show host. You think, Scott Shannon was doing it.
Yeah.
Gary Bryan
there were a lot of guys.
But not easy.
Then in the mid 90s, that was still kind of a thing. it was kind of a thing. But it was fantastic times. We had so much fun, and we were able to be as creative as we wanted to be. We brought in some old couches, put up a patio cover, and had a fire pit out behind the radio station. And we would all just show up there like Friday and Saturday nights after we went out and did whatever we were doing. Then we'd just show up at the radio station and just hang out.
That's how you know that you are on a winning team, when you all want to hang like that.
So much fun. It was just a blast.
Yeah, the team really becomes a family.
Somebody bring a case of beer, and then deregulation hit, and that's when it all changed. We had a local owner. Deregulation hits. I think we got sold 3 times or whatever, taken over.
Yeah, right.
3
I remember
times
thing
in
happened
6 months.
when I first moved to LA. I think within about a year period, I had paychecks from 3 different companies. Same call letters. But
same call letters. A bunch of different people.
Yeah.
Luckily, I want to say remember a guy named Bill Stakelin?
Sounds familiar.
Bill, and he was with a company called, I want to say it was Apollo, and I forget who the other ones were. We eventually got swallowed up by Clear Channel, and they were like, what are you doing? Why are you playing these records? Because we were an aggressive station, but we would play these hot AC records because it was Salt Lake, and the competition was way softer than we were. So I wanted to play both sides. And so we were aggressive promotionally. We were kind of aggressive in delivery, but we were playing Donna Lewis. I love you.
You always
forever. Played the snot out of that record.
It was a smash.
And we made sure that we played it more than anybody else. But at the same time, we're doing, come to our movie premiere of Mission Impossible because it was brand new.
Right.
I just remember because it was a big win for us. Somebody else got the premiere. I won't say who. They know who they are. They got the premiere. We flyered their parking lot. We may or may not have broken into their big jam box thing and turned the station over to ours and deflated their inflatable. We may have done that. And then hid in a ditch to watch them realize what had happened before we all scattered.
That is amazing.
But we flyered their parking lot, and it said, listen tomorrow morning when you hear whatever the song was from U2 in
Mission Impossible?
In Mission Impossible, whatever song that was. When you hear that song at 7:15, be caller number 94 and win Tom Cruise's leather jacket from Mission Impossible.
That is a great
and then to watch them go, and send their street team out there to try and grab all the flyers that they could. And they realized that we again, allegedly changed the station and turned it up, deflated their mascot thing. Yeah. And then it was like, okay, you guys get out of here. Run. And then right when I got back to the station, he was a GM at the time. He's got a programming background. He was the GM at the time, calls our request line. And we were running a thing that said it's going to be, I had Eric Edwards from Power 106.
Yeah.
It's going to be a long, hot summer with hot 94.9, and then it just went into all the different things we were going to do. And so this guy's just screaming at my night guy. And to his credit, he went, hey, it's going to be a long, hot summer, buddy. He hangs up the phone. And I'm just like,
mic drop.
This is the greatest. It was fun. But that was another thing. I went too far. The Shane Company?
I don't think so.
The Shane Company is a jeweler, and it's regional.
Okay.
But there's a guy, I'm Tom Shane. I didn't know it was an actor. They had an actor playing Tom Shane. So I said, look, I need we'll give you 2 tickets to any show anywhere in the continental United States, to airfare and hotel, if you can get me a 5-minute interview with Tom Shane. I figured it was going to be great. It was going to drive. It would drive traffic. But unfortunately, I didn't tell sales or anybody else about this, and it went on the air. Shane Company's like, we're pulling all of our advertising. You idiots. And people are calling him. They're going, my wife has cancer. all she wants to do before she dies is see insert 90s art, wants to see Celine Dion in Miami. You know, and Shane Company's going, we don't know what you're talking about. All of it. And so they go, buddy. So basically I quit before I got fired. And then that's when I went to KISS and we disappeared. It was great. My buddy Chuck Field, JB, who I work with now, JB King, there were a bunch of us. We were going down on a boys trip down in Florida, going out on a catamaran for a few days just to fish and, drink.
Hang out
and all that stuff. So then literally I walked out. They changed the locks.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah. All of my staff is like, I'm calling. I'm like, so what happened? What happened? I'm not. They said you're not coming back. I said, well, I don't know yet. And they go, oh no, you're not coming back. Like, oh, okay. Yeah.
How did they deal with it on the air?
It just
kind of went away.
It just went away. Yeah. It went away. It went away. That was it. I called Joel Denver and I said, hey, Joel, just so you know, because he had left a ton of messages. What's going on, buddy? What's going on? Chetski, what's going on? And finally I called Joel and I went, okay, I'm in Florida. There's something coming up. And then, cause I had talked to Mike Preston and I was going to go to Seattle anyway. So, so we disappeared for like 2 weeks and then resurfaced. It was fun.
And then back to Seattle for a third time.
Yeah.
Amazing.
At KISS, which was,
Tell me about that run.
Mike Preston's the great. We had such a great staff there. Lori Bradley was doing middays. She's so incredible. I was doing afternoons. This guy, Paul Anthony, who went on to do morning shows, for a while, he was doing nights. Candy and Jerry, who ended up remember Jerry Potter?
Yeah, sure.
They were they're huge in the podcast game now. And they were doing weekends. And, Chris Collins was doing mornings. Yeah, and it was fun. It was just fun. We were on the cusp of that singer-songwriter hot AC type thing.
Where I was at Star in San Diego at that point.
Yeah,
same
exactly.
deal. Same deal. Yeah, the Lilith Fair,
yes, you were.
Morissette,
Lollapalooza,
right? Sarah McLachlan, the whole deal. It was a great time.
Indigo Girls came in. Yeah, they made the rounds. Yeah. Lisa Loeb was huge.
Exactly.
All of this. So we rode that. That was a tough battle. You had KPLZ was doing hot AC as well. They had kind of shifted into that mode. So, and they had the big morning show with Kent and Allen.
Right.
KUBE was KUBE.
Phillips, yeah.
KUBE was KUBE. They had the T-Man and they were still doing hip hop. So it was a tough wedge.
At this point too, you start to get involved with doing some sports and you start working for the Seahawks.
Yeah, I was doing music for the Seahawks. That had started when I was back at KUBE. And literally what it was, hey, would you put some songs on will you make us a mix? Just a 20-minute mixtape that they could just play in breaks during halftime. Cause it wasn't all crammed with stuff.
Right.
Like it is now.
Now, we've got the DJs and it's.
Yeah. Now you got a DJ doing it. I was kind of on the front end of that as well. So it had started that I made them tapes. Then it was, we're looking to try some stuff, with sound effects and boom, boom, with the We Will Rock You and jock jams and all that kind of stuff. And so I was one of the beta testers for Paul Allen's, I don't know what they call it now, Game Ops, something like that.
How cool is that? So now you're starting to really get involved. I know you're a big sports fan. You played Little League when you were a kid. So now sports, and we'll get more into some of the sports that you do now, but that's where you really started to get involved. I don't want to say beyond radio, but at least a different lane of it.
A different lane where it's totally different people.
Right.
The club thing's kind of the same and, and all that kind of stuff. 8:30 in the morning, testing your equipment in an empty Kingdome.
That's got to be pretty cool.
It's so awesome. I can't even tell you.
So let's talk about where we are now. And I should have mentioned this when we started the shows. We are at the NAB in Las Vegas in the West Hall here at the Enco booth.
I've never been.
I know, wild. This is your first time here and being on the air here. You've been in Vegas and quite some time. So I'm glad you're here and thank you for making the trip. But tell me about coming to Vegas for the first time to do mornings at KLUC.
Yeah. After KISS, that was a tough situation. I knew that I had credibility in that market. Chris Collins is the morning guy. I'm the afternoon guy. Chris poached an intern through no fault of his own or hers. He and Mike Preston were best friends, you know? And so, you know, and again, everybody's just trying to make everything work. My ego got hurt, you know, because I'm in there and I'm trying to make things happen. I was going after T-Man a little bit. I was starting to see some rating success. It was good to be back in Seattle. I think maybe I was a little bit insecure about it just after the last few years. It wasn't stagnated, but it just didn't feel like I was going where I needed to go.
I get it. And then it was more of your ship, correct? When you were in Salt Lake?
It was totally my ship.
Right.
It was all my ship. And now, but I knew I was going to be back into being APD-MD.
Yeah.
I knew that, as sometimes will happen. Mike and I didn't always agree on all the records. And I ran my mouth to a record rep one day. I'd been bickering with Chris. I was coming back from a remote that I was doing for free. I got caught in traffic. I call the midday person. She's got somewhere she's got to be. She doesn't take it very well. I felt comfortable enough with my friend that I fired back, made her upset. She went to Preston, as she should have. And so all of that stuff piled up, and it was like, hey man, we got to let you go. And I was shocked. The GM was like, I don't even know what's happening right now, but okay. Mike and I, you could tell we just, neither one of us wanted that to happen. He didn't want it to. He did what he felt he had to do. And in hindsight, I don't think he was wrong. I was out for a year and a half.
Really?
Oh yeah. And I was pretty sure I wasn't going to go back in.
What were you doing during this time?
Collecting unemployment, trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. My dad had this little empire out in Duval, Washington, owned a 25 space mobile home park, had an 80-acre farm. We were running cattle. So I was kind of going out and doing stuff with him, thought about getting another job, thought about doing different stuff, slept a lot, you know, because that was, and I didn't realize it at the time. It was my defense mechanism.
Sure.
Doing the Seahawks, doing stuff with the hockey team, there, Seattle Thunderbirds. I was busy, but not really. My dad was paying me to work for him. And literally, I think that was his plan, was that I would take over his little empire.
Right.
So we were kind of working in that direction. I would go do vacation fill-in for people. So that was kind of cool.
When you were doing that fill-in, did you get that tingle again that you wanted to get back and do it on a full-time basis? Or were you still just really trying to contemplate where you wanted to go with your life?
I don't know. I love being on the air. I was doing a precursor to voice tracking. It was basically voice tracking for Jones Media Networks. Yeah. Remember those guys?
Absolutely.
I was doing stuff. I don't know if my heart was in it. I was confused and hurt. You know, again, it's affecting me now, which is weird.
I appreciate you sharing that. I think with this business, in a lot of ways, we put our heart and soul in it, right? And you're putting yourself out literally on the airwaves and bearing your soul. And we put so much effort.
It was all I ever loved.
And to have that taken away from you.
To get fired.
And there's some humiliation.
Because you're an a-hole. You know? Well, because that was the other thing. That was the other thing with that. You know, there's more to that story. Now you're being told you're an a-hole. Because if Mike Preston fires you, Mike Preston's the nicest guy in the business. Right? Everybody loves Mike. So if Mike Preston's firing you, you must not be a good guy. And there was a lot of that juju out there. He's got an attitude problem. He's a bad guy. And honestly, Sean Lynch, man, this is funny. I haven't thought about this stuff in years. Sean was so great. He called, you know, cause he was one of my first mentors. Sean Lynch says, hey, he goes, I know you're not an alcoholic, but I'm going to tell you something that I know from what they do in AA. And what you got to do, my friend, is you have to go make amends. You need to find every person, and I'm telling you, every person that you even think that you might have wronged. Whether you think you did or didn't, or whether you think they deserved it or didn't, you need to find every person that you might have even just looked at sideways. You have to call them, take responsibility for it, tell them you're sorry. There were 3 different people that cried. Buddy, did you think I was mad at you? I don't know. Were you? Because if you were, I'm sorry.
That's such a great piece of advice.
I can't tell you how many times that served me. I had a moment 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now. I was wrong. I blew it. I blew it in a very public way. It was inappropriate, disgusting. I went after my producer on the air. I don't know what I thought I was doing or who I thought I was. But in that moment, I was doing it and I thought I was that guy. I thought I was handling it well. I wasn't. And so I went into him the next day. I said, I don't want to talk about why. I don't want to talk about what happened per se. None of that matters. I want you to know I am so sorry. And I won't even tell you it won't happen again because who knows? But I can tell you that I am incredibly sorry and I will do everything I can to make sure it doesn't. And it goes a long way.
So appreciate you sharing that. And I think a lot of that, going back to a sports analogy and the competitiveness that we have and for those ratings, for those listeners to put the very best product on the air you possibly can, it really is. It comes back to our monkey brain, the fight or flight. And so it's adrenaline that is in you to survive. And we sense our survival. In your world, it's ratings, it's, listeners, driving sales, whatever it may be. And so literally the part of our brain that rationalizes things and is more sensitive, those emotions, those come later in the path of the brain. And so you just immediately are like, I'm going to run from that bear in the woods, or I'm going to fight that bear in the woods. And then you realize when you're fighting that bear in the woods, you're like, well, wait a second, I'm really overreacting to this.
Yeah.
But it takes over. It's hard to manage.
And I think about it too. When a quarterback, I saw it happen to Tom Brady one day. He got caught on camera. He was yelling at Gronk, and it was a big deal.
Yeah.
He was yelling at Gronk, that kind of thing. And I was like, I get that. I understand that. I'm not Tom Brady. I get where he wants you to run the right route.
Yeah.
It wasn't personal, but that doesn't translate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we're all sensitive. We've all got egos. We've all got those things that come into play. And so, it's again, like I said earlier, it's not really doing the show all the time that'll wear on you. It's managing your boss. It's managing the GM. It's managing the sales
Yes.
people.
And so much of it's transference, right? Of one little thing, like we
and them managing you.
Yes. Yes. So you working with your dad, doing some fill-ins, you get an opportunity to come back here to Vegas. So you're back now in Vegas.
Yeah.
And you're doing mornings for the first time. What was that like?
For real. Like
real.
now,
Yeah.
Since Salt Lake, Cat Thomas called me, said actually through Chuck Field.
What a great, by the way, love Mike Preston. We work with him, he's at the Wolf in Dallas. And,
and I still love Mike Preston.
Such a good guy, such a great pro. But you probably did know more about CHR music. That's why he went to country, I'm sure.
I don't know, man. It was just bad. We've talked about it. My God, do I love that man. In
He's
fact,
a really good
man. I can count on one hand the number of people that I don't still just absolutely love in this business. And I think Chachi loves everybody. I feel that. You know what I mean? I love this business. I love the people in it. There's not a lot of people I don't like. I am that guy I figure it's probably something I did. But Chucker called me. Chucker's one of my best friends. Chuck calls and goes, hey, Cat Thomas in Vegas needs somebody come and fill in. His morning show's on vacation. Can you go do a week in Vegas doing mornings? Great. How much? He gives me a number, hotel, airfare. That was pretty much the bid. Yeah. Airfare, hotel, and $1,500.
Realize nice week in Vegas.
Usually that's what I say.
Yeah.
Great. A week in Vegas. Yeah, that'll be fun. Yeah, great. I'll do it. So I go do the week. He offers me the job. Hey, look, we're moving the morning guy to afternoons. We gave it a shot. one day he's going to be a great morning guy. And he was Bo Jackson, who just got let go in Rochester. Bo is such a great talent and such a great guy. And it just wasn't quite the time for him yet there. So they were like, look, we want you to do mornings. All right, great. Thank you, but no. I couldn't pull the trigger. They said, okay. Kat goes, what is it? And I go, that's not you. It's not the station. It's not it. I just don't know if it's really if I want to move to Vegas, any of that. I pretty much resigned to the idea that my life is going to be this other thing.
You feel like you're going through maybe a little bit of depression at this point?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, in hindsight?
Yeah.
Sure. Most of the times you never realize you're depressed until you come out of it. And you go, oh my God. So then Kat said, okay, listen, I want you to come back down. I want you to do another week. We're going to give you a little bit more money. And every day you have to go to lunch or dinner with a different person on the staff. Oh, okay. Great. Okay, fine. I'll take your money. Great. So I came back down. They offered me the job again. I said no. And he goes, okay, one more time. No radio, but we're all going to get together and do. So I came back down, and by the end of that weekend, I was hoping he would offer me again. And I went and put a deposit down on an apartment. I'd started getting my license changed and, all that kind of stuff. Just everything I could do to move. Everything I could do to prepare for the move. And I went home, packed my stuff. I was here in a week, and I thought, okay, I'm back in. I'm going to do this. I called Joel Denver again, and I said, how long do you think I have to stay here in Vegas? And he goes, well, you got to finish out this contract. He goes, you're a bit of damaged goods. I'll tell you the truth. You're a bit of damaged goods because we're friends enough. And I said, yeah, we are. I said, you ain't telling me I don't know anything I didn't already suspect. And he goes, you got to finish out this contract. He says, but I'm going to tell you, you are perfect for KLUC and you are perfect for Las Vegas, which is on the rise. And Vegas and Kat Thomas and KLUC is perfect for you. 3 years later, Clear Channel came and said, come back and, help us save Z100. And they literally were talking Jack Evans. It was the coolest thing that's probably ever happened in my career. One of the coolest things. Jack Evans and I are talking and he goes, okay, what's it going to take? I think we're negotiating. And I'm telling him stuff and he's writing it down. Okay, what about your co-hosts? What about your, this and that? He goes, obviously we need to find out what their contract situation is. And I don't want to be tampering and all that. Okay, I understand. But he goes, but what do you think? So I give him all the numbers and all the things that it would take to go. He signs it, pushes it across the table. He goes, consider this an offer. In my head, I'm thinking, I should have asked for more. I thought we were negotiating. I'd already gone big. I thought I'd gone big. So then I go, look, wow, I didn't expect all this. Do you mind if I call my wife? He goes, I'd rather you call Kat Thomas. Okay. So I call my wife. So I called my wife at the time, my first wife. We're playing a game show, right? And she's going, did they make you an offer? I'm like, yeah, something like that. And she's like, was it the number that we talked about? And I'm like, no. Was it more? Yeah, you could say that. So we're playing this game.
And he's listening in. He can hear you on the other.
I don't realize that because I'm a radio guy that's worn headphones since I was 15 years old and I have these big giant ears. That that my phone's loud and my ears amplifying it as we're going through this game. Now she's gone from asking questions to going, shut the F up. Shut the F up. Now Jack starts laughing. He goes, give me the phone. He's like, yeah, tell your husband to say yes right now. And I will take him down to the Tiffany store at the Bellagio. And we'll buy you some diamond earrings. And she goes, I don't think that'll be necessary. To which point now I'm like, what? And I'm hearing this whole thing. So he hands the phone back. He goes, okay, Well, hopefully I'll get to meet you soon. Hands the phone back. She goes, was he serious? And he yells out, yes, I was. And she, shut the F up. And it was, I took the offer back. They weren't ready. Clear Channel just blindsided them, and that was around the time that Rick was leaving Kiss. And so there was some talk of who was going to be next. They told me straight out, they go, we're going after Ryan Seacrest, because his star had just, no pun intended, he was a star in LA. But with Idol, he had become a big deal. And they said, we're going to go after Seacrest, but we just want you to know, we've got you in mind. You're on our list. You and Dave Ryan and Mojo and, and all these other guys that we've already gotten in the mix, which was nice. Then they were going to move Charlie Tuna, because K-Big was going to flip to my, and, and that was later. Yeah. But remember, Charlie went not long after Rick. So then, and there'd just been some, what would you think?
Well, we really wanted Rick on K-Big at that time. And unfortunately, Rick made the decision that he, I think he still wanted to be on a CHR.
Of course he did.
And
of course he did.
So it all ended up working out. But when you look back at those times, it was a lot of moving parts.
Oh my God. And at that point, and when you had the success that Rick did, you know what I mean? Then now okay, Rick, we're going to make a move.
And I think at that time, it was just, really hard to kind of read the tea leaves as well. And
1,000,000%. 1,000,000%. I tell everybody, they're going to have to fire me. They're going to have to.
Is, I think, genius in all this, going back to one of your very first mentors, is Gary Bryan. Yeah. To go and to transition his career into a classic hits station, which, by the way, is what a CHR was.
There it is.
Yeah. And he's crushing it.
And Chris Ebbett's a genius.
Really,
dude, what an incredible programmer. And that station sounds amazing.
But, at that juncture in time, I think it was probably hard for Rick to see that. And, in Hot AC wasn't, still
would that have been
to
the
leave
move?
Kiss FM is very difficult. It's like, to get out of a Ferrari and now get into a Mustang, whatever. But,
literally a Ferrari. Literally Rick's Ferrari. Yeah. No, you're 1,000,000% right.
So when you come back here to Vegas, is Kat still the program director?
Yeah.
Was he pissed at you, or was he okay and he understood?
No. We had talked quite a bit, and it was a tough situation in Portland. It really was. It was hard. It was tough.
Was Tommy Austin the PD then? Who was?
No, that was Michael Hayes.
Michael Hayes. Okay.
There was a lot of discussion, the direction of the station. I wanted to do a 4 to 6 record an hour morning show, and they wanted to do an 8 record an hour morning show, and it was hard. It was just hard for everybody. And Jammin' 95.5 and the Playhouse, PK and Ebro, two really talented guys, and Dorian, that whole show was a juggernaut, and we really didn't stand a chance. Looking back on it, it wasn't as terrible as it felt. Hey, look, I wanted to go back and have it be 10 shares Z100. And those days were gone. We had a great life. We had a great time. The job was hard. I did my 2 years. We went in. I realized that I needed representation. That's when Paul Anderson came in. There was just some different things that were going on.
Obviously, because you didn't bring your wife back those diamond earrings.
Well, and that was tough. I was going through the beginning stages of what would lead to be a divorce. I had called my dad. I said, so I don't know, man, I'll probably end up getting a divorce after all this. And he was like, why? And I'm like, cause she's already spent the money. That's another thing. It was tough times. I was trying to be self-deprecating. We had a 40th anniversary for Z100 because it was 40 years since they started it. And I was there 6 months in, as a baby doing nights. Gary was there. Sean was there. All the original folks and everything. And I, just to be self-deprecating, I said, man, I'm really sorry that when I came back here from 02 to 04, that I really sucked. And that show sucked. And the other people from the show were like, hey, whoa. And I went, not you guys. Because there really were some great moments. And there really were some cool things. It just wasn't a good time for the radio station and for the people. So I went into Paul and I made the determination pretty quick that I was probably going to leave. My really good friend was in HR. So we have a meeting. And I said, Paul, what do we do about this meeting? He goes, they're probably going to fire you. Let's see if we can quit first or, just be prepared. So I walked in. I've got my manila envelope with my resignation letter. And I see now HR's in this meeting. And now I know.
They've got their manila envelope.
we made eye contact. I hold up my manila envelope. She holds up her manila envelope. And honestly, it took all the pressure off. It was like, great, okay, guys. And I felt bad. I really felt bad. And Tony Coles was involved.
Oh, Tony's a great guy. That's right. I forgot Tony was, such a good guy.
I would have cut off a limb for that dude.
Yeah.
And there just wasn't enough time. Now they had fired the PD. Then they were like, okay, let's change this morning show and let's try and figure something else out. And there just wasn't enough time for me to lose a limb for Tony Coles, as much as I might have wanted to.
It all worked out okay. Tony's fine.
He's
Mike
good.
Preston is fine.
I'm glad I have all of my limbs. Everybody's good.
So you come back to Vegas, you get reunited with Kat.
Yeah.
And does that start to take off again? Does it feel like you're back home? Or
like we never left? It was, and Toy Drive, they had done Toy Drive for a couple of years without me.
Who was on while you were gone?
That morning show turned into, I think, Spence, my former co-host. He was the host for a little bit. He didn't really like it. Everybody thinks they want to be a host. And then sometimes you get in there and you go, well, this isn't my role. He was smart enough and mature enough to be able to go, hey, I don't really like doing this. I like what I was doing before. And they were like, okay, good. You do that. So then they brought in Trejo, who had done middays at FM 102 in Sacramento for a long time. When Clear Channel had signed on Kiss FM in Vegas, he had done mornings here for a minute. So yeah, then they had him on, and then just the ability for me to come back. And everything just kind of worked out.
This market now, I feel, is synonymous with you. And your journey has been remarkable. And you've obviously put in a lot of miles and gone, to a lot of stations, worked with some amazing programmers. But you've now been here for over 20 years.
25.
25. Yeah. I mean, you're right. Sorry.
We count
the first, yeah.
We used to refer to the big mistake, that 02 to 04. And then we realized nobody remembers it anymore. So it's not even worth, we don't even talk about it. So I don't even think about it anymore. We used to tell people it's the 20s, the 27th Toy Drive is coming up, but it's my 25th. Yeah. They don't care about that. They just know that the Toy Drive started with me, and they don't remember when I wasn't there.
Let's get into this Toy Drive. And I just want to remind people of the numbers we're talking about. So last year, 42 semi-trailers full of toys, nearly 8,000 bicycles.
Down just a touch.
That's down a touch?
Just a touch.
Aggregately, since you've started this, over $60 million in donations. So every one of these Toy Drives, you're averaging well over $2 million in donations.
Yeah, that's fair.
Absolutely phenomenal. So talk about the origin story and then you getting involved and now it just being literally supersized to, I've got to believe this has got to be one of the biggest in the country, if not the biggest in the country.
Here's what I tell everybody. I have no ego about this. We say it's the world's largest single location toy drive. It would cost us thousands of dollars to have that certified by Guinness. So we've decided to just look, if you've got a bigger one, bring it to me. I'd love to see it. I'd love to know what your secret was. How? Because I know what it takes to do this. So I'd love to see what you do and what you're drawing from. We're lucky enough that Las Vegas is just big enough to be big enough, but we're just small enough and we're in this bowl where you can be in a central location and people can still come from. We're getting big enough now from a size standpoint that people go, I'd love to come to Toy Drive. Ooh, it's too far. All the way across town, huh? But Kat, shoot, I'd been here just a few months. It was pretty early on because I got here June-ish. We were sitting in the conference room, just he and I. Which is weird. I can't remember why. Maybe we stayed behind after a staff meeting or something. We were talking about making a splash. And what are we going to do that? And I said, well, I don't want to be stunty because that's on and gone. And people don't, I said, I want to do something for the community, something that'll stick, that maybe we can replicate. And he goes, well, what have you always wanted to do? Is there anything you've always wanted to do that you never did? Or, when you were a kid, he goes, because he knew that I was that nerd from young age. This morning guy on KYYX, which was a top 40 Pato day after he left KJR, started KYYX, and they were the rock of the 80s. They did that for a minute. They did, all this different stuff. But this morning guy, Terry McDonald, was climbing Mount Rainier and he got stuck in a storm. And so it became a huge news story. He had a phone, he had a satellite phone or something. I don't remember what the deal was, but basically he was broadcasting, whether this is real or imagined by me. In my head, Terry McDonald was broadcasting from Mount Rainier. And oh my God, it's amazing. And KJR would do live broadcasts from the Variety Club Haunted House, which is why I am on the board of Variety here in Las Vegas now. KUBE took over Variety Club Haunted House. I had done live broadcasts from there, so that was meaningful. And when I was a kid, I had this weird vision of there's a grassy area outside of what is now Climate Pledge Arena. Used to be the Seattle Center Coliseum, became Key Arena. There's the International Fountain. There's other buildings, but there's this grassy area. It's where they had Kurt Cobain's, where everybody met after Kurt Cobain committed suicide. And I thought it would be so cool to have a wooden structure and live on top of it. And it'd be 10 feet high. I don't know. Until you raise $10,000. And I thought that would be cool. I tell Kat this and he goes, yeah, we're doing that. And we're going to do it at Christmas and we're going to raise toys. And I went, great, done. They make a banner and it says the 98K toy drive for 98.5 KLUC, the 98K toy drive. And I go, you realize it means 98,000 toys, right? 90. I'm thinking 9,800 toys, maybe. They said, nope, 98,000 toys. We brought in the Army National Guard. They just kept bringing vehicles, these 2.5-ton trucks. Finally became a 5-ton truck. Then they brought like one of those belly dump trailers. And we just kept filling stuff up that first year.
And it just clicked.
It was the Wild West. So those first couple of years, people were like, let's come and see the crazy guy. Girls would be jumping up out of sunroofs, flashing the thing. Like, it was wild. People would come by. We would tell people, come by. I'm living up there. Come by in the middle of the night, honk your horn. It was a steady stream of horn honks. We finally had to tell people, don't do that anymore. LL Cool J came over from the Billboard Music Awards. There was an after party. My co-host on the show went over to LL Cool J, said, hey man, my morning show host is living on top of a scaffold right now, and we're raising toys for kids. Do you think you could just go over and say hi? It would really help us out. And so the security guy, Mr. Chet, LL Cool J, he's scratching on the side of the tent. LL Cool J is here, standing down at the bottom, LL Cool J, and he sends a check for $5,000.
Amazing.
I mean, and it's just grown from there. We got our first bike. We were like, this is a toy drive. I don't know. What are we going to do with a bike? We didn't know at first. And now that's the visual. That's the thing that I've never come down. I haven't touched the stairs in a decade. My dog died one year during toy drive. Actually, my wife's dog, which, as you know, makes it worse.
Yeah.
I used to take my dogs up there with me. One year, one of them ran down the stairs. I got down to the bottom stair, yelled at him, and he came back. That was one time that I almost left the scaffold. We had 60-mile-an-hour winds. The cops came and said, you can't be up here anymore. We finally talked him out of it.
It's so incredibly inspirational. And I am so grateful to you as a broadcast leader and what you've done for the industry. But even more importantly, just what you do for your community and really, in my opinion, reflecting what's so great about our medium and how we can connect with the community and to raise the money that you have and done what you've done, both certainly on the air and off the air, is incredibly admirable, man.
Well, it's cool of you to say, and thank you for all the time and
of
telling
course.
stories, and
really
glad
quick,
we got to hang out.
Oh, me too. And I just want to wrap with this, just a few of the other things that you do. And we apologize we didn't have time to get there, but you've got 2 Emmy Awards. Unbelievable. You've hosted.
I did a show for PBS, reading kids' stories that they wrote.
I love it. You are the in-arena host for UNLV basketball.
Did that for a long time.
Work obviously with the WNBA. We talked about at the beginning, Las Vegas Motor Speedway, the Seattle Kraken. One last thing I just want to ask you for. This is the quick bonus question, and we'll wrap it up here.
Okay.
Advice, being that we're here at NAB and we've got a lot of young people here with part of the BEA, which I love to see. What is your advice for radio people who are wondering about the future?
That's hard for me. That's really hard for me because we're in times that I don't think any of us ever imagined as an industry. Forget about everything else that's going on in the world. That's, but as an industry, I'm not sure. I know that that opportunity is out there. Yeah, we didn't get a chance to talk about local radio. Oh my God. Trust me. You know who I love? Are the guys like KRKO that are serving the local community.
Yeah.
And you can do all the cool stuff that we used to do. I think they're going to be the ones to bring us back. It's just, look, man, these bigger companies, they can't help it. They're leveraged, man. The margins are just out of control for them. And the business for them is really hard. So for young people, I would say smaller's probably more your friend than bigger. If you can find somebody that will let you work for them, find other ways to make money. Do this because you love it. If you don't love it, it won't love you back. I'm telling you that. But if you love it, it will love you back. If you love it enough, it will love you back.
Thanks for listening to Chachi Loves Everybody. If you like the show, we hope you leave us a 5-star rating and tell your friends.
Make sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
This has been a Benztown McVeigh podcast production. Hosted and researched by Dave Chachi Dennis. Executive producer Darren Silva. Producer and editor Jake Urbanik. Show coordinator Estefania Padilla. Marketing and distribution Suzanne Aksu and Robbie Gessel.